Hello everyone, welcome to the tier list video of OP10. As you may know, I've been playtesting a lot of OP10 and the ban list dropped for me yesterday. So 2 days ago since when this video would be coming out. And had some time, had a day to think about just the format and what to play going forward. So I'm going to talk about the leaders that I think will have a big change in the meta. Um, These ones I'm just not going to talk about because I think there's not a lot going on, or if I just they're just not strong enough and nothing relevant to talk about. So I'll start by talking some of the biggest losers, so to speak, of the ban list. I'll start with Rob Lucci. Um, Despite losing Ice Age and Gecko Moria, I think this is a still regional topping deck. Um, Especially early on when people don't know what they want to play. Black removal decks are just super strong, and you can play other black high ends, notably 8 cost Sabo or 9 cost Stussy, whatever the one meta calls for. You have a lot more room in your deck now, because you can not play full copies of the Brook to try to beat Doffy, and you can cut the Kakus out of your deck as well, to maybe play more Kaidos and other high ends. I think this is the deck that people thought was hurt the most. I think it's definitely still playable. Um, Definitely can still win with it. Um, it's nowhere near as good as it was before, but yeah, still a very good deck. It can still top a regional. It could win one. I wouldn't be surprised because the caliber of Lucci players that we already have are really good. Next, who I would consider um, another another big loser, Smoker. Um, Smoker lost the ability to compete with Blackbeard. Ice Age was one of the main ways it had to reduce. It has potential, but I really don't see a reason to play it. It used to be you can combo Ice Age to She to remove a Burgess against Blackbeard, which is really good. Before this, before the balance, I would have put him here, but now I'm just gonna put this at stay at locals. Um, this deck doesn't really have. I don't think people will be playing this deck. Um, no real reason to. Next, another big loser, BY. Um, this is like I really like the design of this deck. It rewards good play and good play testing. Unfortunately, Gecko Moria was one of the main ways it kept hand advantage and why it was so broken to begin with. Maybe someone will figure out a good list and it'll be broken again, but for now, I don't see this doing well at any major tournaments. Let's see. What else have we got? NL. This is de facto the biggest loser out of the ban list. Yellow is already in like a super rough spot as it is. Um, it's probably like the worst color I think I've said in my last video. Like black is doing well, blue is doing well. Um, green is doing better than yellow. Red's doing better than yellow. Purple is like thriving after this ban list. Um, there's like maybe two cards in this NL deck that I think if you had hit it, this deck would be unplayable. One was the 8 cost Katakuri, and the other one is the Raigo. Those two cards are kind of core of what made this deck. You can still play it starve, but like I don't really see a reason why you would play play it starve. You can play it kind of aggro with like maybe some Land of Wano cards like Yukinojo, the new Hawkins from OP10. The new kit you can like play the burn build like with Hawkins on 4, Robin on 6, Kid on 8, like and just rush Ace on 10. To that, I would ask, why are we playing Burn NL when we can play Kid, the OP10 Kid leader, and with what on plays are you burning their life? Yeah, maybe it has potential. So before, let's see, I would have put it here before the before Kingdom Come, but losing it, it's like it's such a core piece to the deck. I mean, like I would even play it here, but I think maybe someone can figure something out. Um, I I will say I won't be testing this deck too much. I think I had a decent list before the ban list. I was not expecting this to get hit. But yeah, biggest stray ever, and Doflamingo. Um, Losing Jinbei is rough. But you'd probably definitely still playable. You probably wouldn't play the aggro version anymore. Um, Actually, I'm just gonna talk about the two blue decks side by side along with Boa as well. Um, if you want to play aggro Duffy with no Jinbei, I think it's pretty fruitless. With Boa, you can kind of play a more controlled playstyle, which I think is what Duffy is going to end up being. The main difference is that you're going to, instead of using your characters as things to attack and pressure opponent, Duffy is going to have rested characters every turn for them to swing into. So in that case, you don't really care, like other than maybe like Weevil and Get Moria to net you extra cards. You don't really care what the body is, and they're just essentially extra lives that Boa doesn't have. But Boas gets to play more high end. I think out of the two, I am actually liking Boa a lot more as a deck um, than Doffy. Um, but I'm gonna say I don't. I think neither of these are the best mono blue decks, best blue control decks. There's a deck I will talk about at the end, or towards the end of the video that I think has a lot of potential. That is a deck that in theory, I'm gonna start playtesting and might be the deck I end up bringing to big tournaments if the playtesting goes well. Um, yeah, let's see. What else? The balance. Vegapunk. This deck went from like here or here to like here. Losing Raigo is rough, but you can play like an aggro deck. You can play like the aggro version, but I don't see how this deck can beat Shanks anymore. Um, you like with the aggro version, you can beat everything that's not Shanks, I guess. But like losing Raigo, it hurts a lot for these. Okay, let's talk. Okay, now let's talk about the biggest winners of this ban list. Um, Shanks. So I'll deem Shanks to be the best deck out in OP10 after the ban list. I think now you can take out a lot of your like tech cards that you had for Doffy, and you can play in more tech cards to deal with your pre-free matchup, and you can hard focus on Blackbeard, which I will put as the other best deck. Shanks and Blackbeard. If you ask me, I think Shanks is the better deck, at least early on. Blackbeard is going to have a massive target on his back because people think, oh, it's going to be um, the best deck, and and I think Blackbeard can never be the best deck. Same with like any like stun strategy. I just don't think they can ever be the best deck because when it has very clear weaknesses. Um, with now Duffy gone, a lot of the aggro decks um, can keep a big hand, and even decks like Whitebeard can come back where they want to keep a big hand, which Duffy didn't allow. And yeah, so and let's talk about the aggro decks then. Zoro, um, probably the most bog standard aggro deck. I think this deck just gets overshadowed by Shanks nowadays. Like, there's no reason to play Zoro over Shanks. I think Shanks can just now build like Animal Kingdom package with like some of the Rush cards from ST21, the 5 cost Monkey D. Luffy, and you can still play all the choppers. And Shanks has the versatility of, oh, if I need to swing with the um, whiteboard I have, it will swing. If not, they'll just rest the bodies to help me and blockers to help me get through to the late game, so I can start playing my Rayleighs, my Dragons, my Shankses, and even you can even play Pop Shanks now against a lot of the deck. Arlong, I think this deck actually has a lot of potential. Um, your biggest problem was Doffy, and I think Doffy will still be around, but like this deck is definitely a lot more playable. I guess I think this deck has definitely has potential, especially with the new Hawkins. Let me have it. Yeah, there's Hawkins. Um, it's probably to be your best target now, along with Kikunojo, and you have like tools to beat the purple decks like Pluffy and Red Purple as well. Like you're really aggressive, and you have like Hoodie Jones to turn off the Gum Gum Giant and stuff. It's you kind of have the Bella Betty effect of people not wanting to swing into you early, even though you don't play that many cards with Trigger. Um, which Bella Betty, um, Betty, this deck is insane. Um, you have a good matchup in the Shanks, you have a good matchup in the Teach, and you have a good matchup into Pluffy. Where's Pluffy? Pluffy. I guess I'll talk about this next. This is definitely a deck that could win a regionals. Actually, I'm gonna put Zoro here as well. No, not with Shanks. Never mind. Um, with Betty, I don't like personally. I don't like the design of aggro like this as a leader. It's way too glass cannon, but the gameplay is kind of dull with Battle Betty, which is why I really enjoyed playing NL in the past. I like playing a slow and controlled game. Um, but Betty kind of has a good matchup spread. These are the three decks that I project to be the best. Um, and I think you have a solid matchup into everything. It really depends on how the meta kind of turns out. If we're going to be in an aggro meta, where um, you're either playing Teach is what people think will be the best deck, right? So you're either playing decks to catch Teach players, or you're playing decks that will catch the aggro decks. But that those are going to be the triangles. Um, Betty, I think, will be the best aggro deck out there. Um, but it's really volatile. You also have a good matchup with the red purple. I think people are going to be playing. People think it's a it's a big winner out of this balance as well. I'll talk about Pleafy. Pleafy hasn't changed. You have a good matchup in the both Shanks and Blackbeard. Um, but however, like I did the maths on this deck. I don't know if I've put it in a video before, but after as post, so all the math is assuming post mulligan, going first. If you see no searchers, you have like about a 50% chance to see Luffy Tower on curve. Um, if you see two searchers, which is zero zero plus the law, you have a 78% chance, a 78% chance to see Luffy Taro. If you don't see Luffy Taro on 7, you usually just lose the game on the spot, which is my biggest problem with this deck, and I don't like it. Also, it's not a very skillful mirror. Purple doesn't have a lot of skill expression, so I'm not hot on this deck. I don't like it that this deck is doing well. Um, but with all the aggro decks, I think this deck could, in theory, struggle if we're in like a Zoro Betty meta, which brings me to Red Green Law. Every set, I'm big on this deck, and every set, this deck does never fails to disappoint me. Um, I think this this definitely could win a regional. Like I could see it. Um, but like you need a very good pilot. The way I kind of see this deck being built is that you can kind of play cards like Roundtable. You need some game changing cards to beat your Shanks matchup. Your Teach matchup is kind of fine due to just the amount of rush cards you play. You have the unblockable Luffy, now ST21 Luffy. You have like 3 cost Rush Zoro. You have like Kid Killer, just to kind of beat Blackbeard. It could be hard to shambles if they develop multiple dock Qs, or if they or if you play into the what's the event called, the 6 cost Gravity Blade, not Gravity Blade, the Gravity esque event that Blackbeard has, Liberation. Um, you could struggle, but I think like your Shanks matchup is not. It's like it's okay, and I think your like Polyphony matchup is okay. Um, like when they play on the Blackbeard blocker, if you beat the blocker round table it and just like swing and Nami straight into it, like Blackbeard probably lose the game on the spot just because of that. Also, I should mention like the biggest problem with Blackbeard is like a lack of information, right? If you don't know what your opponent's deck does, which at the start of the format, if you don't, we're kind of like in like a lull state, and and you don't know what decks you're going to be facing against as Blackbeard, especially in the first few events, first few regionals. Blackbeard's going to struggle. Might struggle like early early events, but at the end, I could see it even overtaking Shanks, especially if all the aggro deck goes. But at the start, Shanks definitely the best. Edward Nugget. This is another aggro deck that I'm kind of high on. It's Natural Predator. Duffy is no longer the best deck, which means Nugget can potentially come back. Um, this is definitely like one of those decks that's like high risk, high reward to bring to an event, right? Like, there's a lot of small blockers now, and you will struggle. Um, against like against Law has a lot of small blockers, but you do have a lot of the new tools from the new starter deck that you can play. Even though it's only really the ace that's really good for your deck. Um, but I can see it beating you beat Blackbeard. I can see it beating Pluffy. I can see you beating Shanks. Um, the only real problem is how prevalent is this Doffy gonna be. I don't think it's like insanely great. So like So I think Nugget could actually be okay. You can catch a lot of people off guard as well. Um, if you don't run into blue, this deck is still as strong as it was back in OP2. And like you lost an L in one of your weak matchup as well. And you lost Lucci was I think Lucci was kind of one of your weak matchups. BY was definitely one of your weak matchups. Yeah, a lot of your weak matchups are now gone, so any Nugget enjoyers can definitely pick that leader back up again. Nami, honestly, I'm never happy to see Nami do well. Um, but if we're in the aggro meta, Nami could struggle. If not, if you only play against Shanks and Teach, I think you're slightly less favored in the Teach, but I think it's definitely still doable. Um, can Nami win a regional? Uh, if you get really lucky, I guess. But I'm gonna put it here as top of this tier list here. Um, Definitely need a good pilot to try to do well with this deck, but you don't really get anything new. And Blackbeard Pluffy, you're weakened to Pluffy. Slightly losing to Blackbeard, but you create the Shanks. Actually not quite sure how it does against like the likes of Law, Zoro, and Betty. I have to assume it's losing. And you have to cut out some of your like blockers um in this set for to adapt to the meta. Um, but not having to play around putting so much in the meta is always nice. Karakuri. This is, in my opinion, the second best mono yellow deck in this meta. And I know spoilers alert. The best deck I do not think is Kid. It's definitely not Kid. Um, I think this is a lot better than Kid. I to be honest, I'd rather play NL than Kid. And it's like maybe that says something about the Kid leader, but like with no Kingdom Come, I'd still rather play NL. Kid is like you do what Karakuri does, sort of. You do what NL does, sort of. You're like taking a middle ground. I don't believe in that deck at all. Like everything is super linear. You're not beating good players with that deck. Um, I'll rank these at the end. Um, BY Ace. This is I've always been high on this deck, and I've always thought this deck is good. I think you beat in the OP9 meta. I think the only deck you kind of struggled against was Shanks, and you kind of fixed it by trying to play Katakuri. Um, there's like a build where you're trying to stay at 7k every turn, but there's another build where you're playing like Jozu's, Kaido's, and you're trying to use your leader effect to heal every turn with like Hiyori, Viola, and that kind of stuff, or even Flampe to draw two. There's a lot of different builds. I think this deck has a lot of potential. you can play it as like your box standard blue aggro deck, and that's strong into other aggro decks because you're going to be sitting at 7k a lot of the time. And this is like the Luffy killer. This deck is so good in the purple Luffy, man. If I wanted to play a deck that just beats Luffy, I'd probably play BYAs. But unfortunately, I don't think this is in many people's radars at the moment. Um, I would be so happy. I think this deck could definitely top a regional. I'm just not sure if it has like the player base for it. Um, if you get like a good player on this deck, I think they could definitely top a regional. It's red purple. I think this is a big winner with no Jinmei. There, you lost one of your like mid matchups. You could definitely get run over by aggro. Um, but unfortunately, I don't. You're the main reason to play this deck over other like purple strategies like Sugar or like Luffy is that you have the guild to Zoro to just add but keep adding back 2Ks to your hand. But unfortunately, you do not have Gum Gum Giant, so into the bin you go. Reiju. Um, and I got a searcher. This set, I believe, I think you got like the one called Sanji searcher. I think it was this set and the OP11. Um, you got like a consistency upgrade. Um, I would put this like here, just in the trio of blue decks. Um, your strong portion to ETG is strong, but some players as soon as they see Porsche into ETG, they'll just keep that hand and play it on 3 Dawn. Dawn -2 for next turn. Next turn, what do you do? Play back Maria. Do absolutely nothing with your turn. Um, I think this is like people aren't playing this deck correctly at the moment, but this deck could definitely be super strong. Um, your teach matchup is surprisingly good. Your Pluffy matchup is okay. Gum Gum Giant kind of ruins a little bit, I think. Um, but against Pluffy, I see people just try to rush him down. Well, you could do that. I don't think you just. If you see Black Maria, sure, but if you see Black Maria, you can play GG. But other than that, I think you kind of just want to race the judge and kill them through judge. Is how I kind of see this deck. If you have Black Maria, you get the ramp with him, which is nice. Um, yeah, I would let's put this here. Foxy. Yeah, you lost your best matchup. Your second matchup is still here, but now this deck is so much more powerful, and the deck is a bit of a known quantity. Um, still definitely a lot more playable than like most of the decks here. But it's kind of it's kind of it that 7 cost Foxy is really annoying, and locking down a leader can be annoying. It could just be a massive floodgate against certain leaders, like let's see, like this, right? Like against if you play against the Newgate, you just like auto win. If you play against Duffy, you pretty much auto win. You play against this Robin, you auto win Yamato, Zoro Sanji, stuff that says like when attacking on the leader, right? But unfortunately, like it's just not really in the meta at the moment. Um, but this could definitely come back one day. I wouldn't be surprised if it does top like a large event, but I just don't see it happening anytime soon. Especially, I think because this deck might just get run over by some aggro decks as well. Queen. I actually want to talk about Queen. This is gonna be the biggest control style yellow deck that you can play. Um, not because your bad matchup is gone, because Queen was what NL was before NL came out, and it's like you got rid of Rygo, but you have but you have Red Rock. Like Bandai, come on, those 2 cards. Which one's better? I think Red Rock's better, but if someone like figures out a list for this, I think this deck could be very strong. Duffy's not in the picture anymore, and I think Queen can kind of contain some of the other aggro decks. They cannot remove like Queen small blockers. There's definitely a lot of limitations on this deck. Um, but between the two blue yellows, they're very, very, very different playstyles. One just goes all in aggressive with the BY Ace. This one is full control and trying to manipulate life. I also think this is a very hard deck to play. Um, so if someone can figure this out, I think this deck could be very good. But unfortunately, I don't think anyone's gonna put in the time for Queen specifically. So this deck will probably not see the time of day. Bonnie. Bonnie would probably be here. I think Bonnie, you have a crippling Teach matchup. You see Teach, just skip. There's no point playing this game out. Um, Against Shanks, 60-40 maybe Shanks favored. If you see multiple 9-cost Shanks, you can definitely win the game and steal a win. You have the new Smoker plus Tashigi, which is very good in the black. Um, a color that's not going to be in the meta game. And you lost a good matchup in Doffy as well. But if it does become these aggro meta with the like Betty, Zoros, and Rages, you can just cost Kid. They do have power reductions, so you do have to be weary. But I do think this deck is like a regional winning deck. It could definitely win a regional, and it's a deck that people know well. So I think it's a deck that people will just play. Um, Ignoring that Teach it's not going to be around in the early meta, right? You can kind of just play ignorant and just ignore this matchup altogether. Because you have a really good playthrough matchup as well with Holy, Resting Dawn, and just being anti-aggro in general. Kara also does a lot of work in these aggro decks. All right, Marco. Um, this is getting a new structure deck, but I don't think we're getting it anytime soon. I think you have a crippling Shanks matchup, and you have a crippling Teach matchup, and then a crippling Ploofy matchup. Um, but into the rest of the aggro meta, I think you actually struggle as well, unfortunately. Um, if this were like another meta, I really want this leader to be good, but unfortunately, I don't think this leader is it. In OP9, is actually pretty decent. In OP10, um, I think the meta is just like way it the slight changes. There's definitely slight changes, but unfortunately, I think it just pushes it out. Pudding with Doffy gone, Pudding could be okay. The two decks that Pudding could never beat was Doffy and Blackbeard, and with those decks gone, I could definitely see this deck doing okay. Um, the OP11 support for this deck is really good, but in OP10 you don't get anything new. But just in the environment in general, because Duffy is not as prevalent, um, I think this leader could do okay. Um, Obviously, playing 10 Mom is super strong. And against Shanks, the idea is that like you play a 10 Mom on their 6th on turn, right? But if they don't swing into you and you don't have Viola, you're only playing a 9 Mom, which doesn't seem like a big deal until it's like, oh damn, I've missed a full turn. Like I've missed my back-to-back 10 Mom before they hit 10. So um, if you can maybe you can build for it, I could see this deck doing well, and I hope this deck does do well. Um, Maybe early on when Blackbeard is not around. It I I'm a believer in this deck personally. I think you have a good matchup against Teach and a good matchup against Ploofy and a good matchup against Aggro. The only thing that was holding this deck back is Doflamingo. And with that gone, I think this leader can be quite strong. Previously you struggled a lot against Lucci as well. The deck can go so wide, and the restand is just super powerful. Being able to search 9-cost Shanks is absolutely insane. You can like play the generic good green high ends in um Eustace Captain Kidd and 10 cost Don Quixote Doflamingo to lock down your opponent. And along with like all the big film blockers, yeah, this deck will be nuts. I could if this deck. I don't think this deck has a regional win yet. Um, this deck could definitely creep up and win its first regional for sure. Calgara, Calgara. I think this is the best mono yellow leader. Why? You beat Shanks, you beat Pluffy, and you beat Teach. Um, I'm excited to start testing this deck for the first regional that we have, which is April 12th in the London regionals. Um, it's the first regional in post Banlist in the West. Not saying I'm gonna bring Calgara, but this is definitely a leader that's at the back of my mind. Along with another one that I'm gonna reveal. Um, well, there's only some left. Maybe you can guess it. But yeah, this leader is super strong against Shanks, super strong against Teach. Like, there's nothing these two decks can really do to try to beat Calgara. Um, the only thing is like Shanks has Lucky Root. If you see Lucky Root early, um, you can kind of slow down Calgara's pace. But you have a lot of like naturally attacking 7Ks and 8Ks, which just helps you so much. Even this set you can try like you can keep a big hand now that Doflamingo's gone. You can stop playing like stuff like Kudatsu and Raki in your deck and put room for like more aggressive cards like Gembo, the Ace, and the 6 cost Linlin. Red Sanji. Yeah, another aggro deck, but I don't see a reason to play like something like Sanji, uh, instead of like Zoro or Betty, Kagara. I think it's just the weakest aggro deck. Sure, into Blackbeard, but like Blackbeard's already losing to these aggro decks. Why would I play Sanji? Um, yeah, keep this at locals. Actually, keep it at pre-release. This deck's trash. Lim got a lot of new toys. Um, let's put Lim here. You got a lot of new toys. I tried this deck out. Um, the the main problem would be seeing that one cost Lim turn one. If you see that turn one, your deck is absolutely insane. If you don't see it turn one, well, unlucky. You've kind of just bricked. The other problem is your 3 cost Lim can also search your 1 cost Lim. So it's like, yeah, if you miss out on um the 1 cost turn one, it kind of means that you're not restanding it, right? Even going second on your 4 down turn, sure you can play it and still leader effect, but it means it only restands itself, and it cannot restand the thing you played out from leader effect. So it actually makes a huge difference whether you see it or not. You can play a lot of powerful cards like Zoro and Kaido Lilin. But you get yourself starved so often in this deck. I don't really understand how people are making this work. Maybe I'm just like completely playing the deck wrong. The list I was playing was a list I found that won a flagship, so it was like, yeah, this deck's not for me. Um, I don't see a reason to play it over other stuff at all. Especially if like we're going into red meta, where everything you play into can just get the power reduced and then swung into, and then you're looking at it like, oh, why am I playing this leader? But yeah, I guess people this is still strong. You can still high roll for sure. I can top a regional if it gets lucky, but the luckiest limb player can probably do well on that day. Um, Also, it's probably worth noting I don't think this deck can win out through Top Cut. Um, in a Top Cut filled with like Shanks and Pluffy, I just don't see this deck doing well. Red Purple. This deck is good. This deck is brain dead. You have this really interesting gameplay of playing the biggest and dumbest thing in your hand every single turn. kind of like Shanks, but if you break on the ramp, you lose. Um, in an aggro format, this deck might struggle. This deck struggles in the teach, but you have a good matchup into Luffy and Shanks. Um, but like, Benny is crippling, Bonnie is crippling, like Nami is crippling, Teach is crippling. Yeah, this deck. I'm sure someone will make it work. This deck really exceeded my expectations in OP9 as it is, so maybe we'll do the same in OP10. Buggy. This is the deck I'm talking about. I this is all theory at the moment. I think this deck is definitely in like a very good spot. Um, if you can find a good answer to Polyphy, I think this deck will be absolutely insane. Um, you're a natural counter to Blackbeard. You have the new promo to deal with all these aggro decks that's going to be running around, and Animal Shanks as well. If you go first against Shanks, right, on your 5 turn, you can do your leader effect to bring out the 7 cost plus the 5 cost, which on 6 Dawn, Shanks cannot really clear. Um, and then you go to your 7 Dawn, and you can just try to play that again naturally. And then on 8, Shanks can't really play it if you don't swing, right? If you just swing on your board against Shanks and they just play Rayleigh and swing on your board, you lose so much hand advantage, and it means you cannot 10 drop the following turn. Um, so this deck into different matchups, you definitely need to think about what you're doing. Um, and if you can resolve one 10 cost buggy on their 10 drop, I think it's like game winning good. Early on, you can play kind of small blockers like Margaret uh, and Richie. Maybe this deck will play Richie. I'm super excited to start testing this deck. Um, I might actually end up playing this deck for the regional. Not too sure yet. It's deck in the back of my mind. I'm kind of scared to play Teach, to be honest, in the field of aggro. But this is like an all rounder deck, kind of like Shanks. But you have to factor that people don't really know what your cards do. And also Buggy is one of those decks that's super frustrating to play against. You have a 5 cost red rock, right? That can potentially leave behind a big ass body. Um, and you play like a lot of blue staples like Pudding and stuff. You can play Pilaf, you can play Graveblade, Red Rock. The stage is also really strong, so you can guaranteed find all your pieces. And the 7 cost, the big old floodgate. Um, yeah, it'll be very frustrating to play against this deck for sure. Not sure if it'll be great, but my initial thoughts before doing any further testing is that this deck can can be like this deck. Honestly, this deck could be up here. But yeah, oops, that's not right. Yeah, um, I think you definitely need to try to figure out a way to be Ploofy. Um, I don't think the deck has a good matchup into Ploofy going second as it is. I think it's maybe 50-50 going first at the moment, because Ploofy just have no way to clear your board. And early game, you can just play like Margaret, Richie, and Ploofy will struggle. Also, you can play the cards like Gravity Blade and all that jazz. All right, I'll talk about the two Dressrosa leaders. So, Usopp and Rebecca. If the field is like all aggro, Usopp is by far and away better. But if we're in like a more slower format where everyone is playing Teach, sure, like this deck has a good matchup in the Teach. I actually think Rebecca could do quite well. Um, this deck definitely has the potential to stomp on any of these decks before it. Usopp struggles from like has a problem from what I've tested of removing big things, where Rebecca has an easier time removing big things. Not a lot of decks can remove Rebecca's or Lumbus now. I have tried testing this deck. Um, this deck is very hard to play. I don't think I'm playing it correctly, but it still feels super, super strong. Um, People are suggesting play Suleiman plus Grabblade in Usopp. Suleiman Grabblade either removes 2 8 cost or it can remove a 6 out of 10, given that you have Stage. Um, it just feels really clunky, but Suleiman is like it has other uses. Um, this deck, your best matchup in Doflamingo kind of got hit. Um, so not sure how good this deck will be after the ban list. I think Rebecca could possibly be better. This might be the set. I know like there's a lot of big Rebecca fans. This could be the set that Rebecca finally gets his win. The leaders Caesar Clown. This deck sucks. Moving on. Sugar. This deck sucks slightly less. Being having just another leader that's like a lot more defensive that can ramp to 10 cost Shanks just feels really strong. Um, I'm gonna definitely put Sugar here. Um, I'm sure someone can figure out a list that'll just make this leader absolutely broken or busted. Um, right now, I'm not gonna put a like trash tier because that's for Caesar. Um, but not tested enough for Sugar, personally. But I don't think this leader didn't top in Japan for a reason, right? But with this new meta, I think with Doflamingo gone, this leader could maybe do something. Not sure if they played Rayleigh before, but you don't have to play Rayleigh anymore, which is nice. Um, yeah, and you have all these events to help you ramp that can defend your life early. Maybe, maybe I'll do something. Who knows? Kid, I tested this deck. Uh, I'd rather play an El Kata, but I think like with that said, I think this is better than an El Kata. This was like one of the best decks in Japan, like top 5 deck. I'm not sold on it. I think this deck just doesn't have a lot of options. You're a very linear playstyle. Sure, you have no on plays early against Teach, but like neither does Karakuri. You don't have on plays early either. You're kind of defensive like an L, but like how do you realistically beat Shanks, right? There's no Raigo anymore. Um, Surely like when the 10 cost hits the board, like I think you kind of just lose. You cannot rush Shanks down enough. Um, like Rayleigh on curve is crippling to your deck as well. Sure, you can like it's kind of cute that you can make Hawkins a blocker and just trash your life for free. But honestly, I don't see it. I don't see the vision. Um, I know some people have asked me if I want to play Kid or NL um, in OP10. The answer for that is no, unfortunately. Definitely no for Kid, maybe for NL. Yeah, this leader just sucks. Law. I tested a bit of law. Actually, I just have the proxy sitting on my desk somewhere. Now, but this deck is really fun to play. It feels a little clunky. If you put the time into it, um, I think you could definitely do well with the deck. But yeah, you do struggle against Shanks, and you struggle if you don't open like beige, the one cost, which was it? This one, this beige. I think you'll struggle. I've seen like some people try to play a fortress, and it just doesn't work. You have this deck. This deck is an aggro deck. You have to play like an aggro deck, and yeah, if you try to play another way, it's just not going to do very well. Like it's just going to be a disaster. Lastly, Snooker. This leader. Let's put this here. This is a very good anti-aggro leader, in my opinion. I think you will struggle against the likes of Shanks um and Buggy. But like against Betty, because you're green, you can play a card like the Ecos Kid and just call it a day. Um, Also like you reach the being going first on 5 Dom playing Smoker into Tashigi is just super strong. Um, your Tashigi has plus 1,000 power during your opponent's turn as well, right? So it's not that easy to remove after you use this effect. Yeah, I think this is. I think this can win. Obviously, it just won in over in the East, and I mean, sure, Usopp won Asia finals, but this deck is it's not going to be as good as it was in Asia, unfortunately, with the ban. The reason this deck does quite well into like the likes of Doffy is mainly for Ecos Kid, and this deck actually, I think you don't play a lot of on plays, so you're naturally strong against Teach. But I think like against decks like Shanks, you'll just struggle, and this Shanks deck looks like it's going to be super strong, in this upcoming format. Well, um, I don't know. I think this is a long ass video again for another tier list video. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. If there's any leaders I missed, make sure to let me know. Like, comment, and subscribe.